Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne here with you on this Thursday morning. Beautiful day here, Memphis and Cross County. Jacques Doucet joins us, WAFB Channel 9 down in Baton Rouge, two-time Louisiana Sportscaster of the Year in the first segment, followed by Gary Harris in Tuscaloosa, Channel 23 and Tide 100.9. So back-to-back LSU and Bama talk and SEC talk. Somebody's got to do it. We'll do it. Hour number 2. AD Angle, Coach Matt Dean, Rhodes College in Memphis, and John Hartwell, AD at ULM, will join us. I know he said he's been at some Sun Belt meetings the last couple of days in Atlanta. Interesting to hear what he's got going on, because there's always a connection, a seismic connection with what goes on at a conference meeting anywhere in the country. Something's going to come out of it. So he'll be able to pass that along to us. We are here 6 days a week, 25 times a month, at least over 300 shows a year. You know, it's true. Repetition's the mother of all skill. Go get the best guests and bring them on here. Let me say something about RG Contracting, LLC, down in Birmingham. Reed Garrett. Find them on Facebook or website at rgcontractingllc.com. I've known Reed for 9 years now. Hard worker, does great work, started his own business. He's been working for other people for a while, and he's going to do really well with this. But it's RG Contracting. They do residential and commercial work, okay? Let's get started right now with Jacques Doucet. And Jacques, got a lot of LSU people texting me right now up here in Memphis, and they're going, man, I love it. And as Dale Brown said, why the S? Well, you got to know French. I mean, the S is silent. I got an E on the end of Brown. If I had $1 for every time someone goes, Mr. Brownie, I'd have a lot of dollars. But anyway, love having you on here. And, you last week on the 15th, you released the documentary about Cecil Collins, and talk about the reaction from that. And let's go from there as we get ready. We got an off week, but there's a big one coming up.
Yeah, Rob, we worked on a documentary on Cecil Collins off and on for over 3 years. Started shooting it when COVID hit in March of 2020. It laid dormant for about a year. There were several times we were going over to talk to Cecil. It fell through. But then finally we got everything shot we needed to get shot. We weren't sure how long it was going to be. We weren't sure. But Darren DeQuano, the videographer at Channel 9, who's worked there for almost 30 years, edited the whole thing, shot almost the whole thing, did a masterful job. And the response has been tremendous. I think we're knocking on 60,000 views on YouTube in about a week and a half. And we knew it was a powerful subject. We knew that, well, we thought, we were like, we're going to get some pushback for this because Cecil's a very polarizing topic. But I think all we tried to do was lay out a powerful story, tell it objectively. We didn't try to glorify Cecil Collins. We just tried to tell an objective story. And the response has been amazing. People who haven't thought about Cecil Collins since he went to prison, 23 years ago or whatever, are happy to see where he is today. And so it took on a religious feel as well. God saves, Jesus saves, because Cecil's now a born-again Christian and doing the right things, and everyone is hoping he stays on that right path. But he's been out of prison for a decade, married now with a young son. And, I watched it myself a couple of times and got teary-eyed. So that we're very happy with the response. And if no one's seen it, it's on YouTube right now. As I said, a former LSU running back who only played about 3.5 games in 1997, but whose impact has carried on for almost three decades.
Well, I mean, that's what you do as a journalist. And I mean, that's why I respect you and love having you on here. You tell the story and let people decide. And so much of what we see today is someone trying to tell us how to think before we've even read or listened to something. So I respect the hell out of that. And that's what I was taught in college at Auburn by every professor, every mentor that I've ever had is, look, write the story, tell the story, let your audience decide. And I think it's fantastic. And you got 60,000 views on something. I don't think people fully appreciate until they talk to someone that's done a documentary. A 30-minute documentary can take you 3 years to get it right. Something that's an hour and a half can take 6 years, just getting all the people lined up. It's kind of tough, isn't it?
Yeah. And look, there were some tricky things to talk about. Certainly what got him launched from the LSU team, there was a sexual battery charge. There was what happened in Miami where he let himself into a woman's apartment and was watching her sleep. And so there were some things that there was a lot of hearsay on that, two sides of a story that we were like, well, how much do we get into this and that? And we kind of stuck to the facts on the situation. But yeah, in 2020, right off the bat, we shot interviews with Ryan Clark and Kevin Falk and some of those people. And it took a long time to get the main character of the show, so to speak, in Cecil. And look, he is trying to remove himself from the images that come up on the internet. The first things that come up are him, mugshots of Cecil Collins going to prison. And oh, by the way, I mean, I don't know the judicial system, but he spent 13 and a half years in prison.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, my God, he spent that long in prison for that, when other people seem to be doing things that are much worse and spend much less time. But it took a long time to buy the groceries, so to speak. And then once we started cooking, the meal came together relatively quickly. I mean, Darren had the thing edited in about 3 or 4 weeks. Kind of like building a house, Ron. You go through, you got to get the bank set up, you got to get your loan, and then once you pour the foundation, the house flies up in about 4 or 5 months. But just had to get all the elements in place.
Yeah. All right. Pierre Landash, good friend of mine, from Baton Rouge.
No.
Does Jacques put tomatoes in his jambalaya?
No.
I love it. Hey,
I love tomatoes. I love salsa and spaghetti sauce and all that, but not there.
Yeah, I got you. We got 10 guys coming up to hunt with us this weekend from Lake Charles and DeRitter. Bunch of the guys. We got 2 members, I told you, from Lake Charles, and they're coming up to go speckle belly goose hunting, speck hunting. But boy, there's going to be some good food cooked over here, man. It's worth staying in over here this weekend. I don't know if we're going to be in Auburn or going to be here, but I like it. Look, Cecil Collins paid his dues for what he did, and it's an interesting story. And I think it's so much about what could have been, just like the Marcus Dupree documentary you referenced earlier, The Best That Never Was. He had people around him, and you watch that ESPN documentary of Texas and Oklahoma coaches staying at the hotel in Philadelphia. I've run the Heart of Dixie Triathlon many times, and we always end up in Philadelphia at the Neshoba County Fair. And you got to do 2 laps around that track where they have the buggy races. And it's in late July. It's about 170 degrees with the wind chill. But, it's cool when you look back on these documentaries and you go interview these people. And I've got a lot of people. I'd love to go find Brother Oliver. I think the greatest defensive coordinator ever. Certainly my next topic I want to get into is Pete Jenkins. And this is someone just put Tom, because of the internet, this show's podcast live all over. Tom in Natchez, that's Natchez, Mississippi, is Pete Jenkins at every practice. He was at Auburn for several years. I regard him as a scientist on the defensive line. He's that good of a coach. He's loved everywhere he is. He's a young man at 82, whatever, but Brian Kelly thinks a lot of him to have him at LSU, but talk about his role.
Well, he's been at LSU several different times. That goes all the way back to 1980, I think, was his first year coaching at LSU. He's been part of some great teams. He was part of some teams that didn't win as much. I think Nick Saban brought him into LSU when Saban took over in 2000. I think Saban actually ran him out at one point, not intentionally, but Pete's like, hey, I'm too old to be, working 25-hour days at, but then when Saban went to Alabama, he brought Pete over. Pete's worked everywhere, and then some LSU fans over the years would call him a traitor because he was over at Alabama helping Alabama defensive linemen get better. But he's part of a camp every year at Nichols State down in Thibodaux, Louisiana, that draws hundreds of linemen, offensive linemen, defensive linemen. Kevin Mawai is a big part of that, former LSU offensive lineman and NFL Hall of Famer. So in terms of techniques and how to use your hands and leverage and all that, I mean, he's Obi-Wan Kenobi, a defensive lineman for sure. And so the D-line has improved since he's been there. I mean, I don't think he's not supposed to be out on the field coaching. Okay. He's an analyst, so to speak, but they're able to fudge rules at different schools on that stuff, I think.
Yeah, it's sort of like when you hear the Georgia or Florida coaches say, we got to move that game out of Jacksonville. We can't bring recruits there. Oh, I'm sure no recruits are ever at the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. I mean, it's like when we were teenagers, don't smoke, don't drink, don't sneak out at night. Well, that's what everybody did. So,
yeah.
Pierre said you passed the test.
Right. Yeah. I mean, those rules, I mean, that's like those recruiting rules, like for people who cover the team, you're not supposed to take pictures of the guys when they're at games and stuff. Everyone's taking pictures and tweeting and putting that stuff out. So how do you, it's like a herd of cats running loose. How do you round those things up?
Well, it is. And I, the story that we had a discussion yesterday about the Michigan signals, being intercepted. I mean, if you talk off the record with anybody who's ever coached college football, assistant, head coach, whatever, they will tell you everybody does everything they can to gain a competitive advantage. And I asked that question, is it a written rule that you can't intercept signals, or is it a spirit of the game?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when it's all out in the open, right? And everyone's got one of these days and cameras. I mean, I'm not saying it's a great thing. I'm not supporting it. But, you see it now when a coach is calling a play, he's covering his mouth up because he doesn't want someone to, read what he's saying out of his mouth. I mean, I know, like, for when LSU does a spring game and they are just doing everything as vanilla as possible, I've heard they don't even want to do that because coaches can be up in the stands watching and taking notes and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of wonder about that in terms of how much is it up to the teams to protect what they're calling and doing, and then how much of that is you're being a weasel and being doing things underhanded.
Well, I know that it made a lot of people frustrated and mad when Bill Belichick did it in the NFL, but it is getting the signals, and you don't know, when you look from the press box and you'll see coaches when it's 95 degrees outside wearing hoodies or pullovers, there's a reason they do that. This guy is in charge of signaling this. That's what all that's about. I mean, I'm not divulging any nuclear secrets here.
I thought they were just heavy dudes and they were trying to sweat out a few pounds. That's what I thought it was.
Well, it's that, and it's also you got to be able to locate them on the sidelines because they'll say, "Okay, you're at the 20," because they can see you from the press box. So little things like that go on. But all right, let's get to LSU. The best game in college football this year. We were in Auburn after the Georgia game, all watching LSU and Ole Miss. LSU didn't win, but that was an exciting game. And next week, Alabama and LSU will play in Tuscaloosa. This LSU offense is really potent. I'm not saying they're 2019 good, but they're close. How close?
Well, I think it's very similar the jump Jaden Daniels has taken from his first year at LSU to his second year, like Joe Burrow took from his first year to his second year. And certainly, I think he should be in the Heisman Trophy conversation. You see different things, like I think ESPN tweets their 4 guys. Jaden's not in there, but then you see other lists where Jaden's like third best odds or something like that. Unlike Joe Burrow heading into this game in 2019, LSU's lost a couple of games to this point. That game you referenced at Ole Miss was a great game. But then Brian Kelly says, I don't enjoy a game in which I give up 55 points. So I think that the wide receivers LSU has, I don't know if they're similar to Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, who are perhaps 1 and 2 best receivers in the NFL right now. But certainly Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. are really, really good and should be, high NFL draft picks this year. The running back spot, I don't know if the guys LSU has are as good as what Clyde Edwards-Helaire was then.
Yeah.
And then the tight end spot, you had Randy Moss's son, Thaddeus, who did some big things, including that Alabama game that year. And now you've got Mason Taylor's son, Jason Taylor's son, Mason Taylor, a tight end who's only a sophomore, but very good and getting better. So, I think that certainly this offense is not far off from 2019. Daniels may not be quite the passer Burrow was, but he's really good. But he's a better rusher than Burrow. I mean, he's coming into this game with over 500 yards rushing. So here's the deal real quick, Rob, is that in 2019, Joe Burrow was on his way to winning the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
And LSU, I think, had lost 8 straight games to Alabama. And their quarterback play had been pretty bad in that stretch. And their offense had been pretty bad. When Joe Burrow and the offense went to Alabama and scored 46 points, that was it. It was a wrap. He was going to be the Heisman Trophy winner. When Leonard Fournette went to Tuscaloosa in 2015 and was on his way to rushing for 2,000 yards, he ran into a brick wall that night. Derrick Henry ran for a big game. Leonard Fournette's Heisman chances were out the window, and Derrick Henry won the Heisman. So now you're looking at Jaden Daniels. If he has a big game in this game on a big stage, CBS national primetime, this could really catapult him towards a Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, and Jaden Daniels, to me, I mean, he's gained a little bit of weight from last year, probably 12 or 15 pounds. He's strong, and man, he's got an accurate arm. What's he throwing at right now?
I got to look that up. Is he at 72% or something?
Okay.
Completion. I mean, the thing with Jaden is that last year he just wouldn't let it fly. He was always patting the ball and looking, and then he'd tuck and run too quick. I mean, now he's throwing passes 35, 40 yards down the field that you couldn't walk and place in the hands of the receiver any better than he's throwing them. And, last year, LSU beats Alabama in Tiger Stadium on the 2-point conversion. LSU goes for it, right? I think he showcased all the things that LSU lacked in the past for the most part in terms of beating Alabama. He could run, which he did a lot. He could throw. He was the dual threat quarterback. And so I'm sure, if you're Nick Saban, the master motivator, and I've had a great chance to visit with former players this week who played for Saban at LSU. Tommy Moffitt, the strength and conditioning coach for over 2 decades. I saw him yesterday. I said, you think Coach Saban is getting close to retirement? No chance. No way. Too competitive, so I've heard different things about, the NIL, and he's sick of that, and the transfer portal is going to drive him out. I don't think so. So go ahead.
No, I agree. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm saying I agree with you totally.
Yeah. I mean, I saw him last week jog off the field. He's about to be 72 and looks pretty good to me. I mean, and the key to that is like a Skip Bertman. I mean, Skip Bertman got out when he was 63, something like that. And so people are aging much differently than they used to with modern medicine and this and that. So, but I mean, I think that if Nick Saban is a master motivator, he may or may not be playing that 2-point conversion on a loop in the locker room or around to remind them about what happened last year. But I think no one has forgotten. Nobody will, right? So
yeah. Well, I'm with you, and I think Nick Saban is so competitive that he's looking at it and going, all right, I've got 7 national championships. I've won 6 at Alabama. And I think there's 2 reasons why he'll keep coaching for a long time. Number one, he's going to say, well, a lot of people will say, well, you won it in 2020, the year of the virus, lockdowns and all that crap. And people don't think that one was as good. That was a great Alabama team in 2020. They dominated. And He's going to want to say, I'm going to get another one for that. Then he's going to want to say, with all respect to Coach Paul W. Bryant, he won 6 here. I'm going to win 7 here. And I think number 3, he ain't, but he'll be 72 Halloween night. That's not old. I mean, I look at people that my grandmother in her late 60s got her black belt in karate. So, it's genetics. Nick Saban is that this is who he is and what he is. And I would love to talk to the strength coach, Moffitt. If you ever can get him on, I would love to have him on as a guest, because the strength coach and I think Nick Saban, for that matter, is having more fun coaching this year than he ever has because of all the challenges and NIL and the portal. We're starting to see an adjustment there. The free market will fix it, but over half these kids going into the portal are not ending up anywhere else. And the problems, remember the old thing about junior college? Why are kids in junior college? They got problems in the classroom, problems off the field, or all of the above. The same thing in the portal, the same problems that you have for most of these kids, not all of them. At the school that you leave, you're going to have the same problems where you transfer to. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
How many times did you want to transfer when you were a young reporter?
No,
Think about it.
It was funny. I was interviewing some of those former LSU players who played for Saban. They were like, yeah, obviously there was no transfer portal back then. If there was, I think a few of us would have hit it, because of how demanding Saban was and how he, just real quick, there's a guy named Benny Brazil. He's on the LSU track coaching staff. He was a track star, and he was a wide receiver on the LSU football team. And so he's going out for the Olympic team in the summer of 2004. And Coach Saban is like, we got summer workouts. You better get your ass back to Baton Rouge. Coach, I'm going out for the Olympic team. So he goes out. Coach, I made the Olympic team. I'm going to run the 400-meter hurdles in Athens, Greece. We got summer workouts. You better get your ass back to Baton Rouge. So he goes and he runs the Olympics, and he gets 8th place. Okay, he didn't do as well. And Dennis Shaver, the track coach, is there. He said the sweat hasn't even dried on Benny's forehead, and he's getting a call from Nick Saban. You tell Benny to get his ass back to Baton Rouge now. And they're in Athens, Greece. So it's like he must be watching this at 2 a.m, right? And so Benny gets back to Baton Rouge. He says he's watching the local news, and somebody asked Nick Saban about Benny Brazil, and Coach Saban goes, "We're so proud of Benny and what he did at the Olympics. We couldn't be more." And so that's just one of the stories. But just relentless, most organized. When he came to LSU, he didn't like the way things were laid out, right? And he said, this would be like me going to McDonald's, and I get a hamburger here, and I got to drive a mile down the street to get my Coke, and then I got to drive a mile over here to get my fries. And so those were the kind of things he changed here that are still beneficial 23 years later. Yeah.
Well, his first year, you were there. They lost. Remember when LSU lost to UAB in 2000? Sure. And you heard people's ridiculous comments. I mean, people overreact. I can tell you, I was meeting with a client, one of my financial advisory clients, and we invested a bunch of assets into the market February 27th and March 11th of 2020. How's that for timing? We had the pandemic declared March 11th. You couldn't do any better than what I did. And we were looking at the accounts, and he's doing really well because I said, when things were crazy, and there's a comparison here with fans in sports, I said, when would you rather be buying more shares? When the market's way up, when the market's getting the hell beat out of it, and most people are curled up in the fetal position under their desks, not taking calls from their clients? He goes, good point. I said, exactly. And that's what fans, I love the commercial with Dr. Pepper, with the fans going crazy and burning the stuff. And Bosworth comes in there and he goes, hey, come on. It's just the first play.
Well, fans, exactly.
Excited,
And Coach Moffitt yesterday, he told me, he said, I can't go watch games in the stands because of the things that are being yelled and said all around me. And it's not to put fans down and say that we're, anyone's on a higher level, but he's like, I went to watch the LSU Ole Miss game last year, and he said every time Ole Miss had a big play, some guy was screaming behind me, put Harold Perkins in the game. So he started watching, and Harold Perkins was in the game, while those things were going on and stuff. And so it's like he can't make every tackle, even if he is in the game, right? That's not the way things go. But
we know what'll really humble you and make you a better fan is if you ever have the opportunity to sit in the section at a home game at LSU, Auburn, Alabama, where the players' parents and families sit. You'll think about what you say, I can assure you. Now I'm good about saying things, but I remember one time sitting in at the Auburn, Georgia game next to Tracy Rocker's parents. And I mean, his dad looked like the Marlboro Man. He was a badass. I mean, blue jean jacket, blue jeans, cowboy boots, just a stout man, and just rock solid people. And you're around, and man, you see why these kids come where they come from. You are so lucky in your job. And I think the coolest thing you get to do, besides cover all obviously the big name sports, football, basketball, baseball, God, y'all are good in everything. Women's basketball, track and field at LSU. God almighty. That's your insurance policy for every sport you play. In my coaching with the kids I've coached over the years, I love it. And I think it's one of the reasons why LSU attracts so many great athletes, because a lot of them are multi-sport athletes, but probably more of them should be, shouldn't they?
Yeah, I think that was always the two sports, football and track. There was a tug of war there, and the coaches, for example, Eddie Kinnison, that's going way back.
Oh, God, yes. I remember
early 90s. He's now at LSU, working for LSU in sports properties. He was lightning fast, right? First round draft pick in the NFL, spent 13 years, I think, in the league. Jerry DiNardo, when he became the coach in 1995, did not want Eddie Kinnison running track, and they butted heads on that. And I think that in the first two games of 1995, Eddie Kinnison was benched by Jerry DiNardo, and the guy in front of him was dropping passes left and right. And finally, the wide receivers coach said, "You need to put Eddie Kinnison in the game." And they're at Mississippi State. In the first play in, Jamie Howard play action pass, chunks of deep ball to Eddie Kinnison, 56-yard touchdown. But we heard about that over the years, and even like Nick Saban, it's the politician thing, Rob. We're about to go into the politician campaigns. Oh yeah, you can run track and play football. Yeah, you can do that. Then the guy's on campus and he signed, and it's like, this track thing. I don't think you need to be spending a whole lot of time doing that. So. We've heard about that over the years, but, it's a whole different thing, too. I mean, let's be honest. There's not a whole lot of people in the stands at a track meet. Yeah. And there's, 100,000 people across the street for football. So, a lot more glory.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you go back and you look at Herschel Walker, Bo Jackson, Marcus Dupree, these 6'2", 225, 230 pounders. They were track and field people. And Dr. Andrews tells us on the show when he's on, he always talks about the multi-sport athletes. And he keeps the stats on this in the Super Bowls and all these big games. He's Auburn and Alabama's team doctor, Andrews Orthopedic. But he said typically in the Super Bowl, 95% of those guys are multi-sport athletes on both rosters. Yeah. Tom Brady, I think he said, played everything they kept scoring.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to, like Marcus Spears, when he was at LSU, and Michael Clayton, they flirted with trying to do basketball and football, but that is just impossible the way the seasons overlap, the body structure between playing football and basketball, and it didn't work out. John Brady was the head basketball coach at the time, and that just wasn't going to happen. But yeah, at a younger age, I think that in high school, football players should run track, right, in terms of conditioning and whatnot. Basketball players too. Todd Kinchin, that's going way back.
Yep.
But in the late 80s here in Baton Rouge, I mean, he tried everything he tried. I'm going to try tennis, state champion in tennis. I mean, that was the kind of athlete he was. So it's amazing. Like a Ben McDonald, for example. Yeah. Hey, Ben, you play golf today? Yeah, I shot 75. Like he's disappointed. He's a scratch golfer who was the first pick in the major league
in the draft. Exactly.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about it. And what you get to do, you can have somebody from around the country say they're covering LSU, and then you cover LSU. I mean, 23 years now at Channel 9?
Yeah, 23 years. My boss for that entire time, Steve Schneider just retired.
Exactly.
And so they bumped me up to sports director position now. So I'm in charge now. Oh my God. Heaven help us all. So
No, that's a good thing.
no,
Look,
but
I love it.
it's going to be a new job. It's a different job than the old job, so to speak. But it was funny, Rob. My 8th grade year at the 8th grade banquet, I won one thing. Everyone else getting Beta Club, most likely to succeed, best looking. And then in senior year, I won one thing. Everyone's getting scholarships and this and that. Wittiest boy. And so we get in the car, and my dad's shaking his head, just like, you're the class clown. That's what you are, wittiest boy. And so, but here I am. So thank the Lord above that I made it from point A to point B at this point.
No, you're great. In fact, when you look at the sportscasters that are out there today, you're doing, and I saw that. Congratulations again on that promotion. Audrey and I were that night. You were sending me. We were trying to get you lined up, and you said, "I don't know. My boss just retired," and said, "I'm the new sports director." I mean, having worked in TV and having connections to it, that's a lot of responsibility. I mean, but it wouldn't have come to you if you hadn't earned it. I like what Billy in Memphis said, bring Jacques on more often, great pro. Well, you are. And
thank you, Billy.
Gary Harris will be on next. He does Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa and a radio show and a lot of 18-hour Saturdays. But, listen, I say it because I mean it. There's not a gun to my head. The local guys just kick ass. You dominate. And it's not that the national guys aren't good, but when I see stories on some of these national deals, and I'm not going to name them, like a recent hit job on Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss about a player, suing for $42 million. And then I talk to my Ole Miss people that are embedded down there that are there every day, and they're going, that's a nothing burger. I mean, yeah. You got to answer the phone or the emails or the text when your boss, your head coach calls you. That's what you get with local, and I respect the hell out of what you do, Jacques. And I know you don't do a show. You got enough to do as it is. But, man, next week, can we get you back on Thursday again? Because there's a game going on in Tuscaloosa. My oldest daughter sent something in here. She's over in Smyrna, Georgia. Yep, there it is. Mallory, Alabama will roll with defense and Jalen when LSU comes to T-Town. Well, they better hope they can, because Jaden Dan, if he has a big game there, I think he's the front runner for the Heisman Trophy. And if Bo Nix keeps winning, it'll be those two for sure in New York.
I really enjoy going to Tuscaloosa, and then I really hate going to Tuscaloosa. Speak out of both sides of my mouth. It's a great venue.
I love it. I hate it.
I love the layout, how they've got the bars and restaurants right next to the stadium. And,
yes.
The leaves are changing on the trees, and it's really, the essence of fall and football. But I don't, those games LSU lost, and I got to leave. And Road Tide, WFB, Road Tide. I'm at breakfast the next day. I got a purple and gold shirt on.
Yeah.
Some old lady comes up to me. We're real sorry about your team. That kind of stuff that goes on. But look, they're beautiful people all over that campus, and so some of the stereotypes about missing teeth and all that stuff is not accurate. But there is that element of that fan base that just drives you up the wall. But yeah, I mean, I think LSU is a 4.5-point underdog. I think that's exactly what it was in 19, if I'm not mistaken, 5 or something like that. And look, Alabama, they are not the juggernaut that they've been in years past. Here you go. Here's a goofy Jacques Doucet analogy for you. Okay. Alabama right now is like Van Halen in the late 80s with Sammy Hagar, right? They're still selling a lot of albums. They're still one of the top bands. But Georgia is now kind of Guns N' Roses, with Appetite for Destruction when they came out. They're the new hot thing and the biggest band in the land right now. And so Nick Saban's kind of like a prize fighter who's not the heavyweight champ, but he's still one of the top 4 or 5 boxers in the land. So, I think this is the big – LSU cannot win the West if they lose this game. It's over. I mean, and so this is the fork in the road between LSU going to 8-4 land and 9-3 land, or going 10-2 and winning the West and playing Georgia in the SEC championship. So every year you look at it, Rob, since 2007 when Saban got there, LSU 2007, 2011, 19, 22. Every time they've gone to the SEC championship, they beat Alabama. You can't go without doing it. And so here we are again.
Yeah, and that's Gary Harris, WVOA Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa. He and Rodney Orr do Tighter Insider TV. And like I said, when you get the local guys on that cover these teams day in and day out, I mean, it's the real deal. And I respect the hell out of what you do and Gary does. I don't say it loosely. Having done it for a couple of years and then interned for 6 months, I think about having to be up at 3:30 in the morning to help with the morning show with a producer that was just one of the meanest, grouchiest people ever. And it just made me strengthen my resolve to work past her. But TV, the local TV people, you ought to get, incredible compliment. I'm saying it to you. Without local coverage, you do not have a clue of what's really going on. So thanks for that, everything you did. And hopefully you can join us next Thursday again at 8 a.m. Central. Would love to have you back on. I got a lot of people texting going, you need to have this guy on every week. And he doesn't put tomatoes in his jambalaya and his gumbo.
I've never even seen that, by the way. Who does that? I've never seen it. I mean, I've eaten a lot of jambalaya, but I've never, oh, look, there's a tomato in there.
I'll tell you who does that. The same people when I'm down at Orange Beach that go, hey, Ma, let's go to the ocean. No, it's the Gulf, okay? That's a canable offense. Let people know how they can keep up with you and the incredible work you do. And, again, thanks so much for taking time to join us. We appreciate the hell out of it.
Thanks a lot. Jacques Doucet as my name, JACQUES, DOUCET on Twitter. WAFB is our television station. And once again, if you missed the Cecil Collins documentary, go to YouTube. Cecil versus the Diesel. It's there for you to watch, and I'll be happy to join you next Thursday to talk about the Tigers and the Tide in Tuscaloosa.
Hey, we're going to be ready for it. Have a great day.
All right, you too, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. You bet. All right, Gary, great stuff, man. We're Jacques Doucet down at WAFB Channel 9 and at Baton Rouge and local coverage, man. You're there every day. We got a big one. Let me say something real quick about Red River Ford Toyota, Wynne, Arkansas, 45 minutes from Memphis. No vehicle payments until 2024. They got a ton of vehicles on the lot. RedRiverFordToyota.com. They will deliver anywhere. And talked to Justin Wynne, the general manager, said, get on over there. They're there every Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Service department open on Saturdays, 7 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. Damn proud to be associated with them and have them as a sponsor. Gary, it's an off week for Alabama, but it ain't an off week for you. And what's the temperature over there? My daughter just texted, that's her right there, Mallory in Smyrna, Georgia. Alabama will roll. She's an Alabama grad, picked her up on waivers. We love her. And we can even watch the Iron Bowl together. I mean, the thing is, as Dr. Waller May and Dr. Guy May live in Tuscaloosa, the May family, they're like me. We love our school, and they got a ton of Bama friends. And, this is what makes this conference so much fun. And you see the map in the background that my friend Barnwood Brenda made for me that's made out of cypress. She hand carved that. A friend of mine thought it was a chocolate cake, but what's the biggest thing up on there? I showed it to Rodney the other day. The Texas already is the biggest thing on the map, but they're not going to be the biggest story. Once they get in this league, they'll be good. But Alabama right now and LSU are getting ready for a big one.
Yeah, it's Alabama's had it set up this way for really about as long as I can remember to have their bye, and LSU too before they play each other. And I think for Alabama that means 8 straight weeks of football. So I think it's a good break for the team, the coaches, and of course coaches obviously working. They'll be recruiting, tomorrow night, probably out to a few places tonight as well. But and for the fans too, I just think you wait, you get here, and 8 straight weeks of ball, and it's like, all right, we get a weekend off. We can still watch football if we want, but there's no pressure of having to watch your own team, or if you're the players, it's a little bit of a break. And this weekend, they'll give them off, and coaches will give them off, and they'll get away from football for a little bit. So I think it's good timing for the bye week, and it's a little bit later than a lot of schools take it, but I think for Alabama it works because they want that bye going into LSU, and LSU obviously feels the same way. And I heard your previous guest talking about, LSU having to go through Alabama and to get to Atlanta and have the kind of year they want to have. It's pretty much the same for Alabama. I mean, they're sitting here 7-1 and 5-0 in the SEC, but the margin for error is it's not there, because if you lose to LSU, even though you'd have the same record in the conference, that head-to-head tiebreak would go to the Tigers. So, now if Ole Miss were to finish with one loss, Alabama with one loss, and LSU with one loss, then you go into more, since they all would have, Ole Miss would have beaten LSU. Alabama would have beaten Ole Miss, and LSU would have beaten Alabama if LSU wins the game. Then they go to that complicated tiebreaker head-to-head in the West and all that kind of stuff. So it could be a three-way tie. But if it's a two-way tie, like it was last year, then the team that wins head-to-head is going to go. So It's a huge game, and I've talked about this since we've known each other. And the East looks good this year. I mean, Missouri looks like they're legit, and Tennessee's a capable team, but. I still say year in, year out, if you're Georgia and you're Alabama, you'd much rather have to go. I'm just being honest with you. You'd much rather have to go through Missouri or South Carolina or Tennessee than you would, year in and year out than you would LSU or Auburn. And for Alabama, they've had some really good teams that didn't even make it to Atlanta. I'm talking about teams that were 11-0, and it's just, I guess what I'm saying is Alabama has navigated, when they were 2-1 after losing at home to Texas and having that just really dismal performance at South Florida, even though they won the game, there weren't a lot of people that said, they'd win the next 5 SEC games, in a row. A lot of people picked them to lose to LSU. I picked them to lose at A&M. Some people picked them to lose to Tennessee, but they've done that. They've navigated really against, human odds, because as I said, most analysts, I didn't hear many saying, well, Alabama's going to rattle off wins, over Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Arkansas, and Tennessee back to back. And they've done that. So Alabama, I think Nick Saban is doing a great coaching job, because this team coming out of that South Florida game, it did look like it was a mess. I mean, you didn't know what the quarterback situation was. Offensively, they just, had a lot of questions, a lot of penalties, a lot of turnovers. You went back and looked at the Texas game, and you just say, man, you get two touchdowns called back in that game, that if they stand, you may very well win the game. So there were a lot of things that had to be fixed. But, as has been the Saban way, you don't win as many games as he's won, Rob, and you don't get to where he has gotten on the coaching hierarchy, arguably the greatest to ever do it, without being able to figure out situations, not just before the season, but during the season. And, people, I think, forget real quickly with this run of Jalen Hurts and Tua and Mac Jones and Bryce Young. Oh my gosh. Well, when they don't have the quarterback, well, they didn't have the quarterback for a lot of years. And this is no disrespect to John Parker Wilson or Greg McElroy or AJ McCarron or Blake Sims or Jake Coker, but those weren't marquee quarterbacks. And I know AJ McCarron was a great college quarterback, but as an NFL player, he's been a career backup. So these weren't Heisman Trophy caliber quarterbacks. They were not a quarterback dependent offense for a long time. They were a line it up, knock you in the teeth, run the ball, control the clock, run 58, 60 plays a game, beat you down, and then in the fourth quarter, just put you away. Yes, that changed, particularly with Tua and Mac and Bryce, where they were just a prolific passing offense. And, there were a lot of games in the league. I can remember where Alabama was up, 38, 40, 45 points at halftime, and that's not this team. This team is either going to be behind at half or in a close game, or, battling down into the fourth quarter to win games. But they've won 5 in a row. And now they're in the catbird seat. But you said it, and your previous guest was talking about it. Alabama's road is never easy, because they've got to go through LSU, and then they've got to go in years that the Iron Bowl is at Jordan-Hare. You and I have discussed it. That's a different game. It's become, when it's in Tuscaloosa, it's kind of become a one-sided game. Let's just be honest about it. Outside of the comeback, it's been a blowout. But when it's down there, it's a totally different game for Alabama. So and they still have to go to Kentucky. So there's work still to be done for this Alabama football team.
Yeah, there is. And let's go back to Kevin Steele. I do a hike after the show with my wife, knock out about 7 or 8 miles, and I'll be on the phone talking work, talking show stuff. I talked with some Alabama friends, and the one thing I kept saying from the beginning was Kevin Steele is going to bring back that alpha male culture to Alabama. And we talk about it every week. and they really are. And this is a point here. Tommy in Memphis, Kevin Steele's bringing back Bama pride on defense. Also think, and I listen to what you say. I love these conversations. You know, when you talk, you never go off the handle. You're level head. You'd be a great air traffic controller or a great pilot, because you point out when Alabama loses under Nick Saban, you're damn right. It's epic. I mean, it's epic. The Texas loss, even though 34-24, they still had to. I mean, that game was down late. It was still a very close game, and all the panic buttons being pushed. Well, Jalen Milroe quietly getting better. Repetition, experience is the mother of all skill, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, again, Alabama is such a high standard that if you don't get in there and immediately play to the level that the fans are used to or expect, that, you know, they're going to find the fault in your ability and the flaws. And Lord knows, doing a 2-hour sports talk show here every day in Tuscaloosa, I mean, I've heard, you know, Milroe raked across the coals. I mean, can't think even about taking a snap. I mean, there were some people that just flat out on my show said Alabama be lucky to go 500 with this guy. You know, they'll be lucky to, you know, they'll be lucky to win, you know, 3 or 4 SEC games. I mean, he can't do it. I mean, they had already made that decision. I'm not embellishing here. I mean, I had some people call my show and just said, listen, he is horrible. Alabama's got no chance. This is the beginning of the end. If you can't find a better quarterback than this at the University of Alabama, you don't deserve to win any games. And, you know, that's just the way it's kind of gone. But he has been a work in progress. But, you know, one thing about Jalen Milroe is that he's a high-level athlete. And when you have that kind of athletic ability, it gives you an advantage over some people who don't. I mean, there are some quarterbacks that, you know, don't have that kind of athletic ability, and their margin for error is nil. But because Milroe's an elite athlete, he can make some mistakes sometimes and get away with it. He can use his legs. He's got a, you know, really good arm talent. He doesn't always make the right throw, but sometimes even when he makes the wrong throw, it works because he gets it in there through 3 or 4 defenders. And, you know, I've said to you all year long, it's not a question of his ability to throw the ball. Sometimes it is a question of what regards to what he sees, the decision he makes, whether or not he gets the ball out on time. But as far as just, hey, there's a trash can 35 yards down the left sideline, hit it. He can do that, Rob. You see it. I mean, he's got arm talent. And so you'd rather start with somebody that has that kind of arm talent and hope that they learn the nuances of the position. And that's what he's doing. And I got to give Tommy Rees some credit, because at times it's been a bumpy road. But in fairness to Rees, and I had a coach tell me this, and that's why I've kind of, you know, I'm not a coach, but, you know, you appreciate what coaches say. They said, listen, everybody sits at home on their TV and Tommy Rees this and Tommy Rees that. And why didn't he die? Well, sometimes it's hard to call plays when you've got a quarterback that's kind of uneven, you know. It's hard, you know, get him in a rhythm. Well, he's got to get himself in a rhythm. And because Jalen has been up and down, at times I think they've struggled play calling wise. But as he's improved, and I thought in the second half, again, it reminded me of the Ole Miss game where Alabama got the run game going, and they started leaning on that defensive front of Tennessee, and Tennessee got tired. We saw it in the Ole Miss game too. Those are 2 good defensive fronts. If Alabama can continue to do that, and I'll tell you this, that offensive line is getting better and better. Even Proctor at left tackle. I mean, that's a lot to ask to throw a guy straight out of high school in there at left tackle. I don't care how big and strong he is. Yeah. And they've struggled. And you know, Jaden Roberts being inserted at right guard, man, he's brought some physicality to that offensive line. And suddenly, you know, they're pushing people back off the football. And so if they can run the ball, you know, and then Jalen can get in that rhythm kind of the way that he did, they can be a pretty good offensive team. And as you alluded to, with Kevin Steele is he is a bona fide veteran, experienced, you know, has seen it all type defensive coordinator. And he has brought that type of, you were kidding about me having being kind of mellow on this show, and I'm really kind of hyper in real life, but that's kind of what Kevin Steele, I think, has brought to the defense. It's not, you know, we're going to get out there and scream and yell. I'm sure he does some of that, but you know what I'm saying. You've been around him. It's hey, listen, the bottom line is we got to be sound. You know, we've got to have a good scheme. We've got to execute it. It goes back to what Gene Suttolins I used to love his quote about defensive football is 3 things: sight, movement, and contact. You got to see what's happening. You got to see the play. You got to get to the play. You got to hit somebody when you get there. That's defensive football. And
I
I
love
think
that.
that's the way. I think that's the approach that Kevin still has. Hey, just do your job, be sound, tackle. Tackle people when you get a chance to tackle somebody. The difference between getting them on the ground and leaving it to somebody else can be 4 or 5 yards, or it might be 40 or 50 yards. So the tackling has been good. They've been where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there. The pass coverage has been good. Yeah, defensively, when you shut out Tennessee in the second half, that's quite an accomplishment.
Well, and I'll tell you, you go back and you think about Kevin Steele, and I was talking to some people in Auburn yesterday, and we were talking about Kevin Steele, and he is loved by people down there and respected. And that's what you find out a lot about coaches is the stuff that we can never talk about on the show. You and we know that, but just people that like that guy. I mean, I know
the people that wanted him to be the head coach at Auburn weren't wrong. Obviously,
no,
he would have been a much better choice than Brian Harsin. And
yeah.
now I don't know where they would be now. And Hugh Freeze I think will do a good job. But at that time, there was a lot of pushback. Well, why would you get the guy who's already there? Career assistant and all that. Well, the people weren't wrong. He would have been at the time. He probably would have been the best hire. Yeah,
he would have. And you go back. Oh, well, he lost at Baylor in '96. Baylor football was a wreck.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin Steele. His son was already at Alabama. He's got a brother still at Auburn, but I just can tell you from people that I have a ton of respect for, and I just when you talk to them, they're like, man, they love the guy. And I know when he was at Auburn, he would routinely talk to people in fundraising, and going and he said he'd poke his head in here damn near every day and say, hey, you need me to go on the road with you? You need me to go anywhere? He's that kind of guy, and you find yourself, as we go through life, pulling for people at different schools because you've seen them at your school or whatever school, and they are people. But you're right. Doing the show, some of the things that you hear, you're like, Jalen Milroe, he's got a glass eyeball and one leg is 6 inches shorter. He can't do anything. It's just like that in the financial markets. My God, people, what do you do, Brown? The market went down 1,200 points today. I'm like, it did? I'm too busy taking care of my clients. Okay.
Right.
Talk to an emergency room trauma surgeon after a 20-car pileup when they've been saving people's lives. I mean, honestly, they're in there cracking jokes. It's called gallows humor. You got to keep your head about you. We got a member of our hunting club, Will Height, is an air traffic controller, and he's the only guy in the club. If I go, how about a Fresca? He goes, hell yeah, you got one? I mean, remember, how about a Fresca?
Caddyshack, yeah.
I keep a case of Frescas in my cooler in the back of the truck at all times. I got to go back. So I got a bunch of comments the other day. People loved it. They said, ask Gary to talk about the 8 Mile War again. For some reason, that resonates, but I appreciate the hell out of what you do for high school football reform and Pickens and Utah. Because it matters. Were you the one that said last week, you got to get it right to our photographers? This may be their only time. That's the best story you said.
The worst thing for me to deal with is and one reason the 8 Mile War resonates, I think, is it reminds us what we're all about in this state. What little communities are on Friday night. But what a lot of times, of course, I'm the one that is on the air, so I'm going to get the call. I'm going to get the email. I'm going to get the text as you're wrong. But I have to deal with that because all I do is the way it works on Friday nights doing an hour show is most of these times, the first time I see the highlights is on the air. I don't get a chance to look them over. We're trying to get 15, 16, 17, 18 games on the air. Wow. And I have to depend on the script. So if it's written down wrong, more times than not, unless it's a well-known player that I'm very familiar with, if it says, quarterback Dave Smith hits wide receiver, Amarius Sims, then that's what I'm going to say on the air. So if the player is misidentified to me, then I'm going to misidentify it. And the photographers they'll say, well, I'm sorry. I said, well, I get that, but this can't happen because you got to understand on Friday night, these parents, these people in this community, and I don't blame them for being upset. They're watching to see their son, their brother, their cousin, their nephew, their good friend. And he had a touchdown and we misidentify who scored the touchdown. That cuts them. It would cut me. So, we have if you don't know, and I hate when somebody just says number 16 catches the touchdown. What good does that do? But it's still better than the wrong person. I said, if you don't know, then, just tell me, hey, I don't know who this is. And we'll try to, try to call the coach, or we'll try to do something. But that stings people because, and like I said, I get it. That's somebody's brother. That's somebody's son. That's somebody's nephew. And, I'm calling him, Mark Thomas, and he's Brad Johnson. Well, so yeah. And plus it's good for those interns to understand, accuracy is important. So they have to learn a lesson from it too. But absolutely, that's my biggest regret on Friday night is when we misidentify someone.
Yeah. And I remember as a brand new,
and unfortunately
reporter,
it happens, and it's going to probably happen again.
Yeah. A brand new reporter at Channel 3 in Columbus, Georgia, man, you had to be in there for all the newscast, and you had to be in there in the production room, doing the chyron, loading the tapes and everything like that. And there's no room for error. You can't make mistakes. And that's why you're a pro, and hopefully you'll work till you're 100, because you need that attention to detail. The other thing is, Gary, is when people want to skip, they think, well, it's all about the NFL. No, it's not. It's about the high school to college to the NFL. It's like,
well, I'll say this real quickly, Rob, and I got to go
step by step. Yeah.
I love the NFL, and we do a Bama in the NFL segment every week on Tider Insider TV, and I love it. But what is unique to what I do here? Well, it's stuff that you can't get anywhere else. And I love Alabama football. We give you a ton of it, but what you can't get anywhere else is what you said. It's even some of the high school football, the bigger teams, you can get that. But most of the little smaller communities that are in West Alabama, we're it. Maybe WCBI and Columbus might get some stuff in Pickens County and a couple of counties over there in West Alabama. But for the most part, if it's one of these little small schools, we're their outlet. And I do take a lot of pride in that. Hey, man, I enjoyed it, Rob.
Hey, look, Gary Harris, thanks so much. Look forward to it next week. As always, we'll be right back. We're going to take a quick commercial break and be back with the AD angle in the second hour with John Hartwell and Matt Dean after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sideline.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you on this Thursday edition of Sidelines, hour number 2 coming up with the AD angle. Great stuff in the first 2 segments. Jacques Doucet, WAFB Channel 9 in Baton Rouge, and Gary Harris, WVUA TV 23 and Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. Do yourself a favor, Bama fans, football fans. It's cool to watch, even if it's not your team, the local coverage of these teams. Tider Insider TV. It's every Tuesday night, 6:30 p.m. Central on YouTube. Rodney Orr, Tider Insider, and Gary Harris do a great show. As he mentioned, Bama in the NFL. They cover all Alabama football, basketball, baseball, softball, gymnastics. They cover everything, and it's every Tuesday night. I recommend that you watch it. It's just really good stuff. And I think, Gary, made a good point too about high school football. He goes, I love the NFL. I love Alabama football, he said. But the thing that he gets to see are those high school games. Utah, Pickens County, Reform, Tuscaloosa Academy. You've got Northridge High School there, Cottondale, Paul W. Bryant High School. High school football, Gordo, it's big. It's big everywhere. Small town, high school football, it's the biggest thing in those towns. All right? Just remember that. Go to the high school games. I think, Frank Duffy talks about it with Tiger Air, the hometown heroes, business owners, business leaders have an opportunity to invest and put money with the local school, whether it's investing in facilities, equipment, or whatever. That's a big deal. And it makes a huge difference. And Gary's also dead right about getting it right with spelling the names right of these kids that are on TV. Again, it may be their only opportunity ever that they're on television, okay? Having been a reporter, I know it. Now, I will say this. I didn't do hyphenated names. My dad said, boy, we don't do hyphenated names. So if your name was Clarence Beeks Jones, your name was Clarence Jones. I don't like all that hyphenated. I just don't. That's just me. But anyway, Matt Dean will join us here momentarily. Always love to get his takes on what is happening with. First off, we get out there and we get to find out the Oregon angle because his son Tyler is on the staff for the Ducks. There's a lot of good football being played around the country, folks. A lot of good football. Pac-12. Sadly, this is their last year, but you've got some really good teams out there. Hell, I'm not going to be surprised. Washington, watch out for them. Watch out for them this year. They look to be really, really good. Let's take a look real quick before we go to the next hour. But I want to say something, too, about another one of our sponsors, RumbleBoxingGym.com, 1835 Union Avenue in Midtown Memphis. Bam, bam, bam. It's an incredible workout. Open every day of the week. Weekdays, they open about 5 a.m., 48 people in these classes, and you're going to get the workout of your life, all right? They have dumbbells, planks, dips, star jacks, burpees, push-ups on top of push-ups. Then you'll switch over to the bags. They're 15 3-minute sessions. Combines for 45-minute workout. That's the length if a prize fight goes the full 15 rounds, okay? So Rumble Boxing Gym, 1835 Union Avenue, right on the corner of Union and McLean, across from Walgreens. Plenty of parking there, easy to get in and out of, and they have all the equipment that you need there. Ann is going to be at Rhodes College Saturday for their football game. She will be set up there with a tent right there by concessions. They have student discounts, corporate discounts. Do yourself a favor, get the workout of your life. All right, let's take a look here at the top 25, some of the teams. Obviously, Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2, Ohio State number 3, Florida State number 4. How good is Florida State? They struggled on the road against Boston College when the storm was coming through. They were up 31-10. They won 31-29. Had a tough bout with Duke. This is not the Duke of the past. Duke football is so big that they're not talking about Duke basketball right now. Although, if you think Duke basketball is going away, I just looked. They signed 2 of the top 4 players in basketball from the state of California. So, just, they're still Duke. All right, number 5, Washington. Number 6, Boomer Sooner, Oklahoma. 7, Texas. 8, Oregon. 9, Alabama. Now the SEC has 2 teams in the top 10, as well as the Big Ten has 3 with Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. Okay? So Matt Dean is with us right now. Just got that text. I'm waiting on Clarence Beeks to deliver the crop reports on the frozen concentrated orange juice in trading places. But Matt, hey, welcome. John Hartwell is going to be a few minutes late. He's been at Sunbelt conference meetings in Atlanta for the last few days, and he's probably sleeping a little bit because his brain is probably just mushed right now. But how you doing?
Rob, good to see you, man. I'm great. You know, it's funny. I've been waiting all morning on a vendor to show up. They give you these time ranges, right? And
like the cable guy?
No, this one, actually, they're coming to clean my gutters, but tomorrow I got one to prepare the dishwasher, and the range is 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I'm like, oh, that's longer than my work day. Shoot.
Yeah.
So, you know.
That's like Larry the cable guy. I'll be there twixt 1 and 5.
Oh, I know. And it's the world we live in, Rob. You know, you have to, if you want to have certain things done, you have to play by those rules, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, look, the trash truck over here in Parkin in Cross County broke, and then they fixed it and it broke again. So after 10, 11 days of the trash, 2 big bins out there, and it's piled up on top of it, all in bags, of course.
Yeah.
I said, to hell with it. I'm going to just take control. I drove into town and I said, I'm going to find a dump. I went to City Hall. They took me to the dump, and they put some new wheels on the other one. The wheels had fallen off. Now I got 2 trash containers with wheels on them, and all the trash is away. You know what? I like Kevin Steele's deal. By God, don't wait for adversity to come to you. Let's be there. God bless America adversity. Let's get after them. I mean, you got to do that. Coach, I love having you on here. You are like, you can have a 97-year-old man who was a Lance Corporal or a lieutenant or a general, and to the day he dies and ever for the rest of eternity, he's always going to be referred to as that. You earn that title as a coach. You don't now, you get your degree in whatever your degree was in. Yours may have been in physics or electrical engineering. You're pretty damn smart, but you're coach. And I love that conversation we had earlier this week when Ben was on, and it's just fun having you two together. I mean, it's like, Flatt and Scruggs. It's just a lot of fun. I'm talking about Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs, 2 of the great picking and a grinning guys. Looking at that top 10 that I just read off to you.
Yeah.
And that's why I say this on the show all the time. We take a lot of pride, but we're inherently myopically focused on the SEC, the ACC, AAC, the Sun Belt. But look at this. Georgia, number 1. Number 2, Michigan. Number 3, Ohio State. Number 4, Florida State. I want to talk about Florida State. How good is that team? And when you look around the ACC, and I said this for several years, was Clemson's ascension to the top because Florida State was just a dumpster fire? Or was it a combination of really good football at Clemson and Florida State being down? But Clemson's now 4-3 in the ACC. North Carolina gets beat in Chapel Hill by a 1-5 Virginia team. Shake down the ACC for me real quick.
Rob, it's interesting. Clemson had some incredible players. Let's not forget that. From Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, he may have been a little bit prior to their national championship. I can't remember, but they've had, they've had 2 number 1 picks on the defensive line drafted that one year. But it didn't hurt, Rob. It did not hurt that Florida State was not Florida State when they were making their run, right?
Yeah.
You can't argue when they beat Alabama in the championship game, but I do think the overall strength of the league is a little bit up and down. Wake Forest losing Sam Hartman this year changed the complexion of their football team from a quarterback standpoint, right? And then North Carolina has a quarterback I love, Drake May. I mean, I absolutely think he's a top 1 or 2 quarterback taken this year in the draft. But if you're a playoff team, Rob, you cannot lose at home to a 1-5 Virginia team. Now, ironically, a game that's not being talked about for some reason, I'm involved in Pac-12 football these days because my son's at Oregon. But I'm watching last week late. I mean, I'm up to 1 a.m. I'm watching Washington play a 1-5 Arizona State team, right? And the only reason I hung with it in the second half is after I watched Washington beat Oregon in just a fabulous game, 36-33 Penix, big throws down the field to I think the receiver's name was Doucet. And honestly, Washington that day looked like they were a college football playoff team. Then you're like, well, Matt, how's that true if you beat a 1-5 Arizona State team at home, mind you, 15-7, I think, and we're down 7-6 with 8 minutes to play, and Arizona State at Washington's 12 decides to go for it on 4th and 3, and they throw a pick six. That's how you got your next touchdown. So if Arizona State kicks a field goal there, that game is 10-6 Arizona State with 8 to play. So I guess my point is everybody has tape on everybody now. There are no secrets. This is where you really find out who truly is the best is the last 4 or 5 games, in my opinion, because, you're not going to fool anyone. And even the best teams or the better teams are going to get challenged. Would you agree? And we see examples of that. I know you kind of mentioned earlier, we were talking Florida State and Duke, I think, a little bit. Duke's got a good football team.
They do.
I mean, Mike Elko, who my son worked with at A&M, has done a fabulous job. He's done a fabulous job. He's a defensive guy. He's got them playing hard, and they led the game in the fourth quarter, I believe, against Florida State before Florida State ran off 21 straight, I believe. So right now, you can say what you want. A couple things happen in that top 10, though. Michigan's got to play Ohio State. Michigan still has to play Penn State. We're looking at an Oklahoma-Texas rematch in the Big 12 championship game, correct? And we could see Washington, Oregon again as well. So those things kind of check mark themselves out, Rob, and I think we're going to know a lot more in 2 weeks.
Yeah, Matt, I love your perspective. And what is Iowa now 6-2? I mean, they play good. If they could figure out a way to score more points.
I know, Rob.
It's got to be. Look, hey, who am I as an Auburn man to talk about anyone's offense? I mean, good God, you can't get worse than Auburn's offense. Well, you can, but
you
have to work hard to do it. Yeah, you have to work hard to do it. All right, look, Riley Leonard, that's another guy.
Yeah,
that if Auburn would have asked, I hear he would have come. Quinshawn Judkins, I saw his parents, 35 minutes from Auburn, wasn't even offered by Harsin or Alabama. I'll tell you something. Ole Miss has got him a good football team. And we talked to Yancey Porter, and I got a lot of texts from my Ole Miss friends Saturday night. And look, I felt like Auburn could cover. I believe I can tell you, I hope they win every game, but Ole Miss has got a good football team. Lane Kiffin is a good coach. They changed after they lost to Alabama, Matt.
Yeah.
And Yancey Porter covers Ole Miss for us. Rebel Yell Hotline, Monday nights at 6 p.m. on Sports 56 WHBQ and Super Talk, Mississippi. Do yourself a favor and listen. Yancey, I said, what's going on early this season with Ole Miss's offense? They can't run the ball. He goes, well, Jake Thornton, the offensive line coach last year, is at Auburn now.
Yeah.
He said they were running a lot of zone blocking. Now they're doing some man. It seems like, I think Yancey said after the Alabama game, they went back and changed some things. You can, as Butch Thompson says, players are allowed to get better during the season. Don't let the moment be bigger than it actually is. That's what he always says about walking up to the plate. Expand on that, Coach.
Well, we're in the development business as coaches, right? I've got this old saying: if when I coach basketball, if I started a freshman or first year player, by the time we got to conference season, Rob, I expected them to be a sophomore. And what I mean by that is they've got enough reps now. They understand the system. They've experienced the level of competition. They've experienced the physicality difference from high school to college. They've experienced getting coached maybe a little harder, perhaps. So, I don't want to say that because some high school coaches are really intense. I get that. So they're acclimated, right? And I think that's a little bit about what Coach Thompson's referring to is, if you get in the position early on in your career to have an impact, you can't have an excuse mentality. You gotta be the next person up. If that situation comes, you gotta be ready to play. You gotta know the playbook, right? You gotta, in football, besides watching tape with your position coach, you got your iPads. You need to do it when you're not studying for your chemistry test. LOL, right? You got to do your homework. And what I think a lot of the messaging that happens in Power 5 football to these young men, these 4 and 5 stars, is, guys, if you want to play at the next level, first of all, you got to realize in football, the lifespan of your career is not long. That's number one. And number two is all they do at the next level is live, breathe, and die football, which means they're in the office studying it all day and they practice, a little bit. So I just think you have to educate yourself, and you got to be that person that's willing to learn. And I know it may sound very basic, but that's the problem when you get talented freshmen. A lot of times they're just not ready mentally to play. They don't know where to be. They don't know the route tree. They don't know positionally what is going to make them better. And that's why if you have leadership in your locker room, and let's say I'm a really talented wide receiver, and I see you, Rob, come in, and I know you're 5-star, you're going to be in the NFL someday, and you're struggling. It's my job to kind of pick you up, and you got to have good teammates. And the locker room is so important because you got to put your egos aside sometime, and you got to do what's best for the team.
You do, and when you get a player who's the son of a coach, they can be really valuable to you, doing a lot of things. And I like what you said. It's about when you put a quarterback out there. Pat Sullivan won the Heisman Trophy at Auburn in '71. I had him on sidelines when I was in college one time as a guest, and he was coaching quarterbacks and offensive, play calling all on the Auburn team, 86 to 90.
Yeah.
And I asked him about freshman quarterbacks and all. I said, well, fortunately for me, when I graduated from John Carroll High School in Birmingham, freshmen were not eligible. But we went on the road and beat the, freshman team, JV, whatever, at Alabama, and there was a buzz. Of course, there was already a buzz when he and Terry Beasley and Johnny Musso and all those guys came out and played in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game together. But he said if you take a freshman quarterback out on the road in Neyland Stadium in Knoxville, Sanford Stadium, or the Swamp, and he has a bad game, mentally he may crawl back in a hole and never come out, or at least not as good as he could have been. You have to be patient, and you got to put them in positions to win, but you got to coach them up, and they've got to be prepared for it. And you, like you said, as a coach, you're recruited. Once you say yes, everything changes. Once you sign, you get there, you're one of 13 on the basketball team that were the best player on your team. Magnify that, multiply it with football, you're one of 85 or 100. I was the best on my team.
Right.
Then it becomes who wants it the most, doesn't it?
It does. And, what a blessing. Rob, you've been fortunate going to school where you did to be around just some great football icons, So, you look at the history of the SEC and you look at these venues. I think a lot of times, we judge a player wrongly. If you can go in on the road and you're a starting quarterback, you can win in the road at some of these venues. The only stat that matters is the win. It truly does. And that's what I think we miss it. We miss it sometimes. We get so consumed with, yards per attempt, touchdowns, all these things. I mean, if you go on the road and you're a quarterback and you don't turn the ball over, my God, you're doing a heck of a job, just a tremendous job at some of these venues. Because you got to figure you're going to have 4 or 5 false starts because you're going to have some problems at the line of scrimmage with the crowd noise, right?
Yep.
And I think today there's probably right now, Rob, in this day and age, this year, there's so much parity that 10 you mentioned. I mean, we think Michigan and Georgia are the top two. We're going to find out with Georgia. They got a pretty tough 4-game stretch coming up. And I saw someone talk about
Samuel Clemens in Hannibal.
Missouri. Let me tell you what, Missouri almost beat them last year. Missouri at 7-1 is one of the best kept secrets. Well, they're not a secret anymore. They're one of the best teams in college football. Their offense is electric. The thing I'm concerned about when Missouri goes on the road, line of scrimmage against Georgia, I think Georgia will do a decent job against their offense. I'm not sure if their defense can stop Georgia's running game. I look at the second half of LSU Missouri when LSU got down. They ended up, winning the game. The pick six late really sealed it, but that was a 55-49 contest. You're not going to beat Georgia 55-49. You have to beat them like 24-17 in just like a scrap. And are they equipped to do that? But I think Samuel's right. I think they will give them fits. I just think because that game's in Athens this year, I would favor Georgia in that game.
Well, it'll be. I remember.
That's an example we're talking about. Can Brady Cook go to Athens in that stadium, in that environment, and pull off the biggest performance of his career? And that would be just not touchdowns, it's a win. Can he win? Can they win that football game?
Well, go back in the 2013 season. I remember 2013 and 2014, Missouri won the East and went to Atlanta. They went on the road and beat Georgia soundly. And that wasn't a great Georgia team in 2013.
Right.
But you can't just say, well, you can only beat us when we suck.
Right.
I hate it when teams go, well, you beat us when we weren't very good. Well, you beat us when we weren't very good.
Exactly.
I mean,
it goes both ways.
I get so tired of the whining and the people that they're compartmentalists, well, the reason we lost the game is our starting linebacker fell down when your guy ran and our guys dropped 3 passes in the end zone and our quarterback got sacked 7 times. I mean, otherwise we would have won. Well, that's why you lost, idiot. Yeah. Most games are decided by 4 or 5 plays, and you cannot make excuses for when you lose. Okay? Excuses are talking points for losers. The officials robbed us, whatever. I love Coach Dye. Football's a 60-minute game, guys. Don't let it come down to the last couple of seconds and the man in the striped shirt take all you've worked for away from you. Take care of business. You've got 10, 12 possessions a game. Get her done. I mean, it's common sense. Matt, got another one. I like this. Kathy in Selma, Alabama. Matt is right on with his breakdown of player development. Begin because you've coached men's basketball. You've coached women's basketball. There's a fraternal bond among people in the military, people that are doctors, people that are coaches, players. Anything you have to work hard for to attain pulls you closer to the people that you go through that with. You reference a lot. People, young men, young women you've coached that are now successful in a number of things. Doctors, architects, attorneys, financial advisors, general in the Army, whatever. And I bet they all can look back to some pivotal moments when Coach Matt Dean said, you know what, if you quit out here because this is too tough, you're going to quit everything in life from here on out that's too tough. So you have 5 seconds to decide the rest of your life, what are you going to be? That's what coaches are known for. I like Kathy and Selma. You are right, Kathy. Thanks for listening.
Kathy, to expound on player development from my philosophy, it really starts in the recruiting process. If I'm recruiting a basketball player, which I did for a while, I was a head coach and an assistant coach, did it for a quarter of a century. I had to be very transparent to that student athlete and their family on the front end, let them know, hey, this is what I envision your role to be. So I always would use the word impactful instead of starter. So I coached some great players, Rob. I never promised any one of my players they would ever start for me. I did tell the family, in my belief system, you're going to be very impactful for our program. And that could lead to a starting role. And sometimes being a 6th, 7th person, first person off the bench is just as impactful as a starter. So you have to build that transparency process and what I call role identification in the recruiting process. Because the worst thing you can do as a coach is go promise someone a starting spot. You had a misevaluation. You go through all your preseason camp, and that kid's not better than the 4 or 5 players you got, right? You can't do that. You can't do that. And it's not fair to the kid. It's not fair to your kids you recruited. It's not fair to the institution. And really, you put yourself in a situation where you look like a hypocrite. So first of all, you have to be transparent from day one as a coach. And you know what? You have to be good on your evals. And I think it's probably you can miss more in football because you got 85, right? In basketball, when you have, and I was dealing with financial aid packages, Rob. I wasn't dealing with full scholarships, but when in my situation, I invest a lot of time in a kid. I better be right, not only on that kid as a player, but as a person, someone that can make it academically here at Rhodes College, and someone who wants a future beyond basketball. Those were some of my presets when I looked for recruiting a kid. And then sometimes, you know this too, I'll spend the whole year on a kid, 2 years on a kid, and at the end of the day, the kid goes to a higher level. And place. And another thing you can't do, because they used to call me transfer you never burn a bridge. So Rob, I recruit you. I talk to you. I think you're coming to Rhodes. You call me up, Coach, I'm going to go to institution B. And I appreciate everything. The last thing I say, Rob, I want you to be successful. Just remember, if it doesn't work out, you got my number. We'd love for you to give us a second chance. So you got to set the table for the ones you don't get as well. I've had some great transfers, some All-Americans, some kids that have come back to Memphis and returned home and help lead us to championships. It doesn't happen if I get pouty and say, well, I don't want you anyway. You can't be that way. You want what's best for the kid. And if the kid decides they're going to go somewhere else, hey, I hope it works out. Just know, if it doesn't, you got a home here. Just keep me in the loop. That's all you got to do.
You're right. I mean, you're not going to get every client you go after. Your son will tell you that. Your younger son, and also Tyler will. Every recruit,
right?
And this stuff about guys transferring. I remember a friend of mine when I was at Auburn that he started for like 3 years, but his freshman year, he said almost every night in the athletic dorm they had back then, prior to 1994, he said he was getting calls from other head coaches. Hey, if it doesn't work out at Auburn, we'd love to have you. It's been going on forever. We just have cell phones now, and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and Snapchat and face mask and all that. I mean, all kind of things. Now, why Weekend Wayne in Noonan, Georgia? That's home of Sprayberry's Barbecue. Pretty good. Why did Auburn hire Hugh Freeze? Well, I'll just say, again, you talk to people that know Freeze from his Ole Miss days and in Memphis. What I'm saying, he will never be caught in this quarterback death valley that he's in this year. Playing 2 quarterbacks, I'm not a fan of it. If I were him, I'd go with Peyton Thorne and run up tempo. Peyton can run. He's pretty damn good. He's, I think the stat is on Robbie Ashford. He has 1 run in an SEC game of 11 yards or longer. 1. Peyton Thorne has like 10 of 11 yards or more. But no quarterback's going to get better if he's got to be looking over his shoulder all the time. If in an ideal world, I think Robbie Ashford should go to the coaches and go, look, what can I do to help this team? I'll play slot receiver. I'll do whatever. And maybe it'd be great if a sports agent could go to him and say, Robbie, you're a 1st or 2nd round draft pick athletically, maybe as a wide receiver, give it a shot, but you are not as a quarterback. And, I go back to Gene Chizik told me one time about the conversation he had with Carlos Dansby out of Woodlawn High School in Birmingham. He said, I've coached a couple of Jim Thorpe Award winners. I think you're really, really good. You could be an all SEC defensive back. But he said, I think your money position in the NFL is going to be linebacker. You could have a 10-plus year career there. Well, a day or two later, Carlos Dansby said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And, in 2003, he and Dontarius Thomas out of Perry, Georgia, who came to Auburn as a 6'3", 186-pound linebacker, member of the 4x400 Georgia State Championship team in track and field. They were both like second-round draft choices in the NFL. Dansby played, I know, 16 or 17 years in the NFL.
Crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
So but Freeze is there. Look at recruiting. I think Auburn this year will sign 3 or 4 5-star recruits. That's why he's there. And the deal with McGriff, the crime dog at defensive back, he's not coaching now, but he's still on the field. And now Freeze has made him director of accountability and recruiting. Is that's the place where he can help the team most. I know that McGriff wants to retire in Auburn. He never sold his house when he left before. But Freeze in the next couple of years, as frustrating as it is, I think he's going to get back involved in play calling. And I think he looked at it and said, I've got to recruit my ass off to fix this mess. And I think that's why he was hired.
Rob, you never say this publicly if you're a head coach, but you kind of nailed it. I mean, Hugh Freeze is there for the long haul. He knew year one was not going to be a national championship football team, right? So you go recruit, you recruit, and when he gets his guys in there, I'll tell you, watch out. I think they're going to be a problem for a lot of people. I think offensively, he's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I think he's seeing that there is tremendous pressure at Auburn, but fans don't be stupid. You got to realize, and we pulled up some numbers on recruiting, and they're unbelievable. But if you look at those numbers, and you say, how did you end up in this mess? Look, the interesting thing is, if you look in Auburn's last 4 recruiting classes, I mean, you've only got the 4 classes combined. 6 of the 22 starters are high school recruits. Stutz is 7 and is a 6th-year virus guy. Maybe 15 of 44 in the 2 deep depth chart. Auburn has 1 starter and 1 backup offensive lineman in the 2 deep depth chart from our previous 5 recruiting classes. Gus and Harsin essentially put Auburn on probation. Damn near the death penalty. It's that big of a mess. But Auburn still ranks number 16 on the blue chip index for talent. Over 50% of your roster, 4 and 5 stars, but lack of player development. Again, you can't leave the groceries in the back of the car for a week. They'll go bad. You got to develop them. I want Gordon Ramsay as my chef. I don't want Uncle Charlie from My 3 Sons.
Well, and, there's obviously still a lot of talent on the field, but, if you don't have the quarterback position right, it doesn't really matter in college football or pro football for that matter, or high school football for that matter. If you don't got someone who can spin it, make good decisions, and make sure you throw it to the right team, you're going to be in some games, out of some games, and that's where I think it's remarkable year so far for Alabama, because Milrose had a lot of growing pains, and they're 7-1. And that, and you telling me the thing that's remarkable about Coach Saban is just, he gets talent, but you talk about a guy that develops players. I mean, Coach Saban develops players and the game of life too. And when you leave Alabama, you're ready to play at the next level. You're probably pretty prepared who to talk to about managing your finances. And then you're probably pretty prepared after football life's over. What's the plan there? I was watching the other day, Mark Ingram, former Heisman Trophy winner. He's now an analyst, on pregame, I think, with the Big Show on Fox, And,
yes.
And I think it's great, too, we're seeing a lot of former athletes in those roles. And I love it because it gives them, I mean, they know the most about the doggone sport anyway, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just terrific for us football fans. And getting back to Kelly, life on the Gulf Coast is great. Watching college football, drinking cold beer, and sitting on a beach chair. I'm with you, Kelly. I'm with you. I got to work this Saturday for about 6 hours and hopefully catch the second half of some games. You know,
Yeah.
when you're a college football fan, Rob, and you get to travel to venues, I think of Frank Duffy all the time. How much fun does that cat have? Huh?
He and Franz Beard, the two most interesting people in the world. I was on a call. I was on a call last night for about an hour and a half with Frank about Tiger Air, about an offering they're doing. And holy cow, he's smart, and he's got a lot going on. But you're right. I mean, we were down at Orange Beach last month watching football, looking out over Ono Island, going out on the beach, drinking cold beer, going over to the Floribama, eating lots of oysters. I love raw oysters. And you
That's
just
a good
can't
place
get
for them. Floribama, man.
Well, you know, it is. And Audrey's right. You know, we're earthlings. Take off your socks, take off your shoes, walk around barefooted, walk on the grass, walk on the sand. You know, there's a lot of energy. Get reconnected. But you can get your head right when you go down to the beach. Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, we're over here at the farm right now, maybe having to go back to Memphis this afternoon, but there's a spiritual, a temporal connection we have to the land. You go back to the fugitive poets, the great writers in the 1920s that were at Vanderbilt. They published the great treatise, I'll Take My Stand, about people in the South leaving the small towns and being stacked in these big cities. Thomas Jefferson warned, brilliant observation from him, be wary of these big cities like London in the old country, of warehousing people on top of each other. They lose their survival instincts, their ability to fend for themselves, and ultimately they will become dependent on a government. Thomas Jefferson was a savant. He was brilliant. He was also an architect. That I'm kind of partial to that, seeing that old man Browne's an architect, you know. And as he says, calculus, well, the governor wouldn't sign my diploma, nor would the president from Auburn till I passed it. But in practicing architecture all these years, never once, ever have I used calculus. But you got to have it. So there's just certain rituals you got to go through. We've got to take a quick commercial break. We got a bunch of questions on here, Matt, when we come back. But I think what we're seeing in college football, what I'm seeing is a Billy Graham type revival of the fans. They've seen all the NIL. They've seen the portal. They hear all these negative narratives out there, and they're going, not on my watch. This is our game. We'll be right back with more on Thursday's edition of Sidelines. Hello, Lane Duggar, listening down in Auburn, Alabama. Appreciate it. We'll be right back.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I'm R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
I'm back here with you. Let me say something about, again, one of our sponsors, ECS House Industries, located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas. 99,000 square foot warehouse located right in the heart of the Mississippi Delta, about 14 miles north of Wynne, 32 miles south of Jonesboro, Arkansas. They make the better roller, the pulverizer, the better chopper. They make the aerators that you use for catfish farms. If you like catfish, you see these catfish farms all over the South, ECS House Industries makes those aerators, okay? Check them out on our website, ECS House Industries. They do the work that makes farmers more productive. There's nothing more productive in the world than the American farmer. ECS House Industries on our website at sidelines.live. Also, RedRiverFordToyota.com. Red River Ford Toyota, Wynne, Arkansas, 45 minutes from Memphis. If you are driving from Memphis, do yourself a favor. Go over there, get off I-40 at the Forest City exit, go 15 miles north on Falls Boulevard. Can't miss it. If you're on 64 going back and forth to Heber Springs, half-mile south of 64, right there in Wynne. Open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Service department open on Saturdays, 7 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Over 700 cars, trucks, and SUVs on the pre-owned lot, and tons of vehicles in the brand new Ford, Toyota cars, trucks, and SUVs. They're bringing them in every day. Justin Wynn, general manager, reminded me that right now, no vehicle payments until 2024 on all vehicles on the lot. They're getting inventory in every day. They're great people to work with. Ask for Justin Wynn, the general manager. Tell him you heard about it on Sidelines. Rusty Howard, Greg Smith, Brandon Boger, Cecil, Randy, Stacy, Nate, everybody over there. Great people there to make the process as easy as possible. Proud to be associated and have them as a sponsor. We're blessed, as we are, with Tom Martin's Body Shop, RumbleBoxingGym.com, Gateway Tire and Service Centers, Boy Scouts of America, Reforest, Mississippi. Remember, Gateway Tire and Service Center, we go the distance for our customers and the communities where we are. Hewlett and Dunn, Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Web-Footed Kennel, Gaddis Home Innovation, Miss Rubens Rubs, May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport, and Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Let me say this about Hewlett and Dunn, too. Get out there on the square. They're getting in boxes every day, 30, 40, 50 boxes a day. They've got the largest order ever of Filson, and they're the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast. Devil Dog Jeans, Old South products, Ariat. They've got, oh my God, the largest collection of duck heads. Everything Duckhead makes, they've got it. Over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots in inventory. They're open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Charles Hall, his wife, Laura, Raven, everybody there on the, you go back out to that square in Collierville. It's easy to get to, HewlettandDunn.com. Check out the website. Call up. Tell them you heard about it on Sidelines. And all of our sponsors, support them. You see them on the scroll here on the screen. They're all on the website. Tap on the hyperlink. Places like Tom Martin's Body Shop, downtown Memphis. They're great. They are there to serve you. Let them know you heard about them on Sidelines. You know, Kelly is down there at the beach right now. A lot of other people are kicking back and watching football, which is, we love it. We got basketball. Matt, we had Coach John Brady on the other day with us talking about college basketball, SEC Media Days. A lot of things happen. World Series. It's all great time of the year. And it's in the mid-80s right now here in Parkin.
I know.
It still feels like, well, summers around here, it's hot, but that's just part of it. But what right now, you mentioned in the SEC, let's look at the SEC, ACC. You know, I see Memphis now they're 5-2. Yeah. The AAC is going through a lot of changes, but I see Army has announced they're going to be playing football in the American Athletic Conference next year. Army puts out a good product. I mean, they have to play LSU. Nobody wants to do that, but Matt, college football is on fire.
Yeah, it really is. And I think you touched on it earlier, Rob. I think, you know, the NIL created some fan backlash a little bit. I think it's settled down a little bit to a degree, but obviously it's a big portion of business these days. The transfer portal, we've talked about that a ton on this show. You need to know how to manage it. If you can manage it and you can add to your high school recruitment and you develop players, and you know, I look at Oregon. One of the best decisions they made, Dan Lanning made when he took the job, he brought in Bo Nix. Okay, yep. And not only did he bring in Bo Nix has a fabulous first year for him. convinced him to stay for his his COVID year. And right now they're in the hunt. I mean, I just think you have to, if you're going to go get a quarterback in the portal, right, you have to identify not only someone with arm talent, not only someone who is fits in your system, can be a winner, but just someone that, honestly is going to be good in your locker room. And that's not easy to do. And that's why I think when he had Kenny Dillingham on his staff the first year, Kenny was around Bo that first year at Auburn. I think that's part of the connection. I think Dan had worked with Kenny before, I think at the University of Memphis, if I'm not mistaken. He decided to hire him as offensive coordinator, and Kenny convinced him to take Bo Nix. And that year that they had last year is why Kenny's a head coach at Arizona State now. They had a great year. Kenny's like the youngest Power 5 coach out there, I believe, at 33.
Yeah.
And those are the type of decisions, ironically, that lead to success that you really can't – there's not really a blueprint for that, Rob. Sometimes you just got to get lucky a little bit. And big game for Oregon this weekend, going at Utah. When I sat down with Tyler over the summer, we were at the Floribama Yacht Club, whatever that name is, and we were talking about the upcoming season. I said, you guys got Washington and Washington and Utah on the road in a 3-week stretch. I said, if you guys can split those games, then I think you got a chance to get to the Pac-12 championship game, which obviously they lost by 3 to Washington in a really good game 2 weeks ago. So now Oregon is in a must-win if they want to go to the Pac-12 championship. And I think it's going to be a fun game. And, defensively, Utah, what a game they played against USC. Bryson Barnes was outstanding. But USC still has some defensive issues. They gave up 34 to Utah, and Utah is a team that doesn't traditionally score that many times over 30 points in a game. So big game out in Salt Lake City. Looking forward for that one. And I'll tell you another game I'm looking forward to this weekend. I'm kind of curious, Rob, about Tennessee and Kentucky, more so because I thought Kentucky, when they were at 5-0, were pretty good. And then they got humbled against Georgia. They got off to, I believe, a 14-0 lead against Missouri. Missouri fought back and really dominated the rest of that football game. That game, I think, is in Lexington. Will Kentucky rebound under, Coach Stoops, or will Tennessee rebound after a great first half and just completely shut out in the second half against Alabama?
Yeah. Matt, and John Hartwell being an athletic director, things just pop up. He goes, is it too late to join? I said, jump on, John. But you never know what that knock on the door is going to mean. And I look here at what's going on. Like I said, he's been at Sun Belt meetings. Yeah. You need college football. It's boring to have the same teams. Even if it's your team, it's hard. You're sitting there going, you'd like some competition. I think going through tough times, the peaks and valleys that you go through as a program, as a fan too, you're with them. That's what makes you appreciate success. Okay. Yeah. When you look at people who have never been through adversity in their life and they get sucker punched, it's sometimes sad to watch. The kid that's from a wealthy family that's never had a job. It's like they were born on third base and thought they hit a triple. If you have a lot of money, the worst thing you can do to your children is give them a lot of money, because you'll have a bunch of Paris Hiltons running around, and I think you talk about Nick Saban, something they do at Alabama. I believe it was Trent Richardson who talked about they have an office, like a corporate office suite set up in there, how to interview, how to dress for a job interview. That's a big deal. Financial literacy. Yeah. Knowing how to read a balance sheet. We were on the call, Doug Dean and Frank Duffy and I got my son Wilson, who's in investment banking, private equity. He's been out of Auburn for about almost a year and a half. Holy cow. I mean, they train them really well. Louder Hall, Harvard College of Business Management. Man, there were some questions being asked, about placement and all. it's amazing to me. You're right. 99% of these kids are going to go pro in something else. The NCAA, they got that commercial right.
They did.
And they better be prepared because that airs. Remember what John Thompson had in his office? Legendary Georgetown basketball coach. He had a basketball with all the air let out of it on his desk. Said, better get ready, guys.
I think you look historically at the better coaches, and those were the ones that, talked about those things, not only in the recruiting process, but every year the student athlete was playing for them about, okay, what are you going to do when you leave our institution? And that's what we always do at my place is, we're talking about internships while they're in college. We're talking about recommendation letters for graduate school opportunities or med school. And then for me, the culmination of being a longtime coach, when we dedicated the floor to Coach Hilgeman a few weeks ago, it was great. Some of my players I coached in the 90s came back up to me and they're like, Coach Dean, you've been here 33 years. We were talking about you the other night, and we're like, gosh, you were really young when you coached us.
You still are.
Well,
you're young.
I started as an assistant at 24 years old, so those guys were 19, 20. So yeah, we're close in age today, and we were close in age back then. And I appreciate anytime a former player reaches out to check on me or my family, and a lot of times they'll say, "Hey, just thanks for everything." And it doesn't have to happen. I don't need that, but it's just affirmation that I was in the right profession. Because Rob, when you're coaching at my level, you're not getting those contracts that people talk about on radio shows like yourself about, are we overpaying for this guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like one of the perks of my job is, I was here long enough so my oldest son got a chance to go here with tuition remission and set him up in a situation that prepares him for the rest of his life debt free. And those are things that you're talking about Wilson, and I can't imagine the pride you have when he's in there talking about that ledger sheet, to your colleagues and your friends. I mean, it's the same thing when I go visit Oregon and I see Tyler recruit, because, I used to recruit my whole life, and I'm like, yeah, didn't fall far from the tree, man. He picked up on a couple things. He used to go to practice, and same thing with my young guy who's in the financial industry right now. And I said, man, you just have to exude patience, my son, because at 24, the big fish aren't going to give you their portfolio.
No.
If you continue to hang around this industry, I said, Rhino, in 10 years, you're going to be better than us all. I said, you just got to be patient. Patient?
Yeah.
It is a virtue. A lot of us don't have it. A lot of us didn't understand it when we were 22. But hell, we sure understand it now when we're our age, Rob.
No, you're right. And golly, Hallie, my daughter, she's like, thanks for giving us that love of the outdoors and competitiveness. And that's you can't, and that's something they learn from you. You better, if you lay around on your ass, on the couch and do nothing and you're just a slob, your kids are going to think that's okay.
That's right.
Mine grew up with me getting up at 5 a.m. and, swimming or whatever. You've got to set a good example. Same thing with coaching. It's exactly that. And remember, like my son, Max, I think he's going to end up being a world-class chef. We'll come home sometime. He'll cook for us. And you're like, good God. Steak, shrimp, the golden potatoes. And but he loves that kind of stuff. And when he called me this summer, or he texted me during the show one time this summer, he had just knocked out the Teton Trek Trail out in the Grand Tetons, 43 miles of running and hiking nonstop, 43 miles of that. And Max, I'm like, Max, and that's incredible. And I'm in, I remarried, and I got Mallory. She's got the 10-month-old Chandler banging into everything right now. I remember taking Hallie to the zoo one time in Memphis. My daughter was 9 or 10 months old, I pulled her out of the stroller and said, start walk, make them walk. And say, that's cruel. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not. You've got to raise the bar and people will come to it. And tell your son, because I remember being a brand new financial advisor. How long have you been doing this, son? 2 weeks, a month. But I'm surrounded by over 150 years of experience on my team. And that's something you said about in coaching, 24 years old. And you think about Frank Broyles at Arkansas. He went over there and he found John McDonald, the great Irishman who's won 40-something national championships in track and field and cross country and all at Arkansas, and said, I need my football players to get in great shape, great conditioning. He worked with them. I'm trying to think how old John McDonald was at the time, and Frank Broyles, he wasn't young either.
That's right.
He was very young at the time. I think that's really cool. Matt, and we got just a couple of minutes here, and it was a lot of fun. In the first half, we talked with Jacques Doucet, WAFB Channel 9 in Baton Rouge, and Pierre Landash. He and Bud Ritchie, we were over at Rhodes back March 26th. We did a big cookout at the Sigma New House, and they had the big pot, and the over and under when you get Warren A. Bud Ritchie and Pierre T. Landash, both of them, by the way, from Louisiana. Pierre together, and they're cooking. The over and under on the number of you're going to get when you're cooking is 1,000. But I like that. He asked Jacques Doucet, do you put tomatoes in your jambalaya? He said, no. He goes, no. He passed the test. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but Matt, the cool thing about it is, again, your situation's different. 1,950 students at Rhodes, 527 of them are student athletes. It's almost 27% of your student population. At most places, at Auburn or Alabama, it's 1.5%.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then about 1% of them will go pro in that. My friend Barry Blackburn, rest his soul, his grandfather, big Stephen Winston Blackburn, was about 6'4", looked like Fred Gwynn from the Munsters. He got the GI Bill, went to Auburn. He said, grandson, you better get your education because you can make a living with your hands, but you can make millions with your mind. Hit the damn books. And that's what as a coach. But I also had a coach tell me a funny story yesterday. He said, I was being interviewed for a job one time. I was a young coach, and nobody would ask about academics. I said, you're not going to ask about that? And they said, well, he goes, look, my players all graduate, and I've got players with honors. He said, but I'll tell you what, I could win he goes, I could have 5 of my people go on to be engineers, 2 of them doctors. But if I went 2 and 8, y'all still fire my ass.
That's right. That's right. And that doesn't change, man. It doesn't change. The last thing I'll say about when, my women's teams that I coached at Rhodes, man, my women athletes have been so successful. I've lost track. I think I have 7 or 8 doctors out there, or doctors to be, that are in med school or residencies right now, Robin. One of the niches I used about Rhodes College, we had such high placement rates for med school. So a lot of these basketball players that were borderline Division I would say, hey, look, if you're going to go, let's say the University of Arkansas, be a preferred walk-on, and you want to be a med student, you're going to be miserable because you can't balance your life in both. Come here, play for me. Basketball's not the top priority. Academic is, and we'll win a lot of games. And you know what, Rob? I was right. And I'm glad a lot of them took my message to heart and played for me. And right now it's great when you're at my point, 33 years at a place, Rob. It's just fun to reflect. It's fun to reflect back and just see how successful your players have become when they leave college. There's nothing better, Rob. And we remember some big wins, and that's great. Remember a few championships, that's great. But man, to see what they're doing after college, it just reaffirms the whole message.
It does. Hey, Ann Camp Lee is going to be over there setting up Saturday, Rumble Boxing Gym over at Rhodes. If we're in town, I want to come over there and see you as well. But you're right. That's why you do it. That's why you push yourself and these guys so hard. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Folks, we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. It is we the people. It's what it says in the preamble to the Constitution, not we the government. Don't ever forget that. We the people. Go out, have a positive impact on people's lives. Kind words and kind deeds go a long, long way. Help people out. If you got it and you're blessed, bless others. You don't have to, but you ought to want to. We'll be back tomorrow. Matt, thank you so much. We missed you, John Hartwell, but I know you're kind of busy as an AD. Jacques Doucet, Gary Harris, to all of our listeners, viewers, and sponsors, we appreciate you more than you can imagine. We are out of here. We'll be back tomorrow. Anytime with Matt Dean is a great time. See you then.